Transportation Committee meeting for the 2020 to 2024 Transportation Improvement Program. We will explain that process after we have called the roll. I do encourage members of the public to also email any comments to us at public.info@metc.state.mn.us. We will respond to any of your comments in a timely manner. Because this is a virtual meeting, we will need to be calling the roll. So with that, we will have Becky call the roll in alphabetical order. But before we do that, you our Transportation Committee members, you'll see that we have switched over to the second half of the year. So Becky is joining us as recording secretary. So I want to welcome her, and I also want to take a quick moment to thank Jenna for all the work she did as we were transitioning and having to shift over to virtual meetings. So with that, Becky, could you call the roll to determine who is here?
Councilmember Linnea Atlas Ingebretson. Councilmember Reva Chambliss.
Here.
Councilmember Molly Cummings. Councilmember Christopher Ferguson. Councilmember Chris Fredson. Councilmember Francisco Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilmember Philip Sterner. Councilmember Raymond Zirin. Chair Barber.
Here.
The roll has been called.
Thank you, Becky. So now we are going to transition over to the Transportation Improvement Program public meeting. So I believe it's Jen will be taking over.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today for the draft 2021-20-24 Transportation Improvement Program public meeting. I'm your host. I'd like to first go through some housekeeping. You are currently muted and will remain muted until you are recognized to speak. We will have a short presentation about the Transportation Improvement Program and then open the meeting for comment. Please use the raise hand feature if you would like to provide a comment. You may use the chat to provide a comment. However, your message will only appear to the host and the panelists. If you have dialed into the meeting, this meeting and wish to speak, dial *3 to raise your hand. Once the public comment is complete, the chair will end the public meeting and the Transportation Committee will continue its regularly scheduled business. You are welcome to remain on the event and listen to the meeting. And back over to Chair Barr.
All right, we will now begin the public meeting. A link to the draft Transportation Improvement Program will be provided in the chat. The program includes highway, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian projects proposed in the Twin Cities metropolitan area for the next 4 years. The program includes both federal and state funded projects. Your registration for this event serves as a registration to provide a public comment. We will first have a brief presentation from staff. If you have a comment, please raise your hand and the host will call on you and you will be unmuted. So now I'm going to turn it over to Joe Barbeau.
Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm presenting on the 2021 through 2024 Transportation Improvement Program, and this is the public meeting that we were scheduled to have this year. Last year we did this meeting as a drop-in at the Stone Arch Bridge, and this year due to the COVID issues, we're doing it in this format. So this is a pretty brief presentation, so I think it's probably preferable that people hold questions till the end, and then we'll take questions and comments about the tip. So the Transportation Improvement Program is a 4-year list of transportation projects funded entirely or in part with federal funding. Any project funded with federal transportation dollars must be included in the tip, as well as projects that affect air quality. This is a requirement for all regions of a certain size across the country, and is required for any project that takes federal money, that receives federal money to be underway, to get started. So after we put our projects into the TIP, they have to be incorporated into the statewide transportation improvement program, which incorporates our TIP as well as projects throughout the rest of the state. And that's the place at which projects need to be included in order to be funded. So this is where we're at now. We're between the first two bullets, I guess. TAB approved the TIP to be replaced, to be out for public review. That public review period started on June 20th and will end on, I think it was June 20th, and will end on August 10th. During that period of time, we take comments and we'll respond to them in a public comment report provided to TAB at its August 19th meeting, where they'll hear the comments and recommend approval of the TIP to the Transportation Committee and the Council at that meeting. And then it goes to Transportation Committee, this body, and then the Council should approve the TIP on September 23rd, 2020, at which point we pass it on to MnDOT, who includes it in the State Transportation Improvement Program later that month or early October, and then federal FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, and Federal Transit Administration, the FTA, should approve that. Usually around November 1st. It was a little bit later last year, so that's why we put November/December as the date there. After that time, the TIP will be in effect for the Twin Cities region. So here's a brief summary of how much funding is in the TIP. It's about the draft TIP that's out now is about a $4.7 billion program. You'll see that the plurality of funding is property and state taxes, but there's also a lot of federal funds, $1.3 billion from Federal Highway, $1.2 billion from Federal Transit Administration, as well as state trunk highway funds. So here's a couple of brief examples of the types of projects that you'll see in the TIP. So we have transit projects. Transit projects are typically programmed by by Metropolitan Transit and the opt-out suburban providers. We also do fund a few transit projects through the regional solicitation that TAB programs. So here's one example of a project that you'll see in the TIP, the B line. You've by now, this is a higher profile project that many of you have heard of. It's very similar to the A line that opened up a couple of years ago, and to the C line that opened up recently. So then we have a lot of road projects, local road projects, and this is an example of that. This is the Hummel-Bielenberg Bridge in Washington County, and you'll see it's a bridge over Interstate 94, and this is a road project that also connects very well with other modes. You'll see this will connect with the Gold Line, the bus there on the left side of the picture on the right, and a bike path going along it. So that's an example of a local road providing connection for several modes. And then bigger projects, big highway freeway projects. Our example here is the I-94 Interstate 35W interchange. This is just one example of many, many types of freeway projects that we do. And finally, non-motorized transportation in terms of bikes and walkways. So here's an example. The Stone Bridge is in the TIP. It's going to be undergoing a rehabilitation in the near future. So we have a lot going on here at Transportation Committee. So I did go through that pretty quickly, but I'm happy to answer questions about the TIP itself or about the projects, or we're happy to take comments about the TIP as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe, for that. We very much appreciate it. So now we can be ready to go through and take the public comments. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jen as the host.
Thank you. If you wish to ask a question or speak, please go ahead and use the raise hand feature below your name, or the *3 if you are dialed in. When you speak, state your name, place of residence, and the organization, if any, you represent. Written statements, in addition to oral comments, are accepted. You may send a printed copy of your remarks to public.info@mec.state.mn.us. And I will go ahead and unmute the line.
Yeah, thank
Please
you.
go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome to the committee.
Hey, Deb. Hey, thank you for having me, committee. My name is Lang Zhang, and I'm from Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Before COVID, I avidly attended your Metropolitan Council meetings. I gave one public meeting there, one public speech. I've been studying the TIP program and the highway improvement programs for quite a while. And for me, my specialty is in emotional intelligence and empathy. I'm a 32-year-old millennial who, quite frankly, is talked about instead of talked to. And one of my biggest concerns here in Minnesota is that the biggest causes of death among our young adults are car accidents. There's a lot to do with the highway program. And the data shows that it's accidents that happen at 80 miles an hour on highways on dry pavement. And to me, I'm thinking, like, what is going on there? It's dry pavement. What are they doing? Well, they're in a hurry to come back home from school, coming back home from the holidays and all that stuff for summer break, spring break, and they're dying. I would hate to get that type of call. So in my background, I used to work at Discount Tire. And for being Discount Tire Salesman of the Year, I was able to go out to Las Vegas, and they put me behind all kinds of vehicles, not to test the vehicles, but to test the tires. And they taught us how to evasive maneuvers and all that stuff. Well, some of the grown men that were with me were scared the bejesus out of them. And they told me that those ride and drives changed their life. We already knew about tires. We understand what safe tires look like. We understand the necessity of having a snow tire in the wintertime. So I think the deaths, to me, are happening because young adults don't understand the vehicles. And when they're taking their vehicles in for maintenance, they don't see the simple stuff like a flat tire or bad tires, or they replace one tire and the other three tires are not matching. And they get into a situation where they had to maneuver the vehicle where they get scared, and then they just go over the median and hop it. My understanding is that those guardrails that are in the median today are supposed to stop that kind of stuff, yes or no? And I think those guardrails that are in the middle today cause more trouble to vehicles than they do good. The data doesn't show that they're actually doing anything that is preventing these vehicles from crossing the median. I think the fix is simple. We should implement a program that educates young adults on just simple vehicle maintenance, like vision, eye view. Not even, they don't need to know how to change the oil, but they should know how to change a spare tire for young adults. They should know what a bad tire looks like. And that program can be implemented in our metro transit area parking ramps, because most of the time those parking ramps are dead. They're empty. They're only filled during the week. And one of the biggest struggles with car maintenance is getting your car to the shop, right? Because who wants to drive to the shop, have somebody drive you to work, have somebody pick you up from work, drive you back to the shop, and then get your vehicle again? No one. So why not have a group of young adults work at those transit centers and help them with that, so that the young adults understand how a bad vehicle looks like, how bad tires look like, and we can implement a leadership program that establishes how to properly carry yourself on the highways, in schools, and everywhere else, because that's what Discount Tire taught us, was leadership. And Mr. Bruce T. Holly taught us one of my most valuable things is you must give before you receive. And to me, we should give the education back to the young adults so we're not losing them at an alarming rate. Today, I think that we're killing ourselves faster than any other age demographic out there. And I think the solution is simple. Use those empty parking ramps for education purposes and establish a program that helps educate those young adults on how to properly maintain your vehicle. They don't even have to work on it. They just have to be there and, drive those cars around like a car dealership that, I forgot what you call them, but those guys who drive the vehicles around for customers and stuff. But yeah, I'm a little nervous and I apologize. And, for me, those parking ramps are already used at late nights because teens love going there and just parking there and just hanging out because it's high up. You got a lot of height, right? Elevation. That's one thing we don't have in Minnesota is elevation. We're flat land. And if you want to go anywhere with elevation, you got to go to Duluth or you got to go to Winona. That's quite far away from the metro cities. I think I'll leave it at that. And, you know, there's a lot of things that we can add on to those parking ramps. I've seen solar on them already. You can add trees, right? You can add events. You can, you know, charge for those events. And, you know, Minnesota has one of the best car shows in the United States. I don't know if you guys know, but Back to the 50s is the #1 car show in America. And 90,000 participants participate in that every year. That said something, right? Because the average age of, the average time of death after retirement is 6 years. Well, if there's Back to the 50s and they're 1950s vehicles, those guys are easily well into their 80s, and they retired back when they were 60. That's saying something. That's saying that they stayed alive because they had a purpose in life of maintaining their vehicles and making it look good. And I think that's what keeps people alive. I will end it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. And Jen, for the next.
Yes, we have someone that is called in on the phone. I'm going to unmute your line now. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bob Zick calling, North St. Paul. And
welcome to the committee.
Thank you. And I'm calling in regard to the intended or planned Bento Nature Trail bus route and the money that wants to be thrown at that project. I totally disagree with that approach. First of all, you're going to run a commercial bus line down behind people's homes, and I do not have a home on that trail, but I do use that trail for bicycling and walking. And so we're going to lose a wonderful nature trail, and this bus line should be going down Highway 61 because the proposed purpose of this is for commercial businesses. And where would you develop commercial businesses but along a major thoroughfare like Highway 61 into downtown? Now, I just think this approach of using that nature trail for this expansion of a bus line is just backwards thinking. I mean, I understand that there's this intention to put this voucher housing in 5,000 units out there by Frost and English, and I'm anticipating another 10,000 units out there where Maplewood Mall is when that mall finally closes down. And I look at this as a project that people do not want. It's another one of the Met Council's good intentions, and you know what we say about people with good intentions. And so I'm totally opposed to this, and I hope that you would take more public comment about the resistance to have that nature trail converted to this. And if we run I know the Met Council chairman owns a bus company, but ask him where a bus should be running. And using Highway 61 makes more sense. If things don't work out, you have not invested huge sums of taxpayers' money, and for a project that people don't want. And so I'm just going to let my comments go with that. I do, because your other caller mentioned those guardrails that are put up along the highways now, the ones that are those cable guardrails. I don't know, but being a motorcyclist and being a member of the Antique Motorcycle Club, I would hate to ever get tangled up with one of those on a motorcycle. They just look deadly to me for people that ride motorcycles. And at least a solid barrier, the motorcycle will not get tangled into and will at least be able to slide down the roadway. So as long as he made that comment, I just wanted to add that too. But I thank the Met Council for allowing people to call in and share their views. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We will make sure the information gets in the record, and we will also forward the information about the Vento Trail to Ramsey County because they're actually the lead on the project, but we'll make sure the information gets to them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will unmute the next caller. Please go ahead with your question.
Hello? Am I the next caller?
Yes, you are. Welcome
Yes,
to the committee.
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Kevin Berglund, Citizens Reporter News. You can see the shows on local news Maplewood. That is on YouTube. Local news Maplewood, one word, on YouTube. And I'm in Maplewood, and I first of all want to thank you for your leadership, Miss Chair Deb Barber. And thank you for hosting this. I heard the other caller, the previous caller, and I agree with him. The rush line, and I'm referring to the rush line, which is in the Transportation Improvement Plan, and that's page 42. And it's the rush line BRT. And that is to be down the Bruce Vento, former Congressman Bruce Vento Nature Trail. That was one of his specialties, preserving the environment for pollinators and as a nature gateway, which it is currently. And I know Ramsey County, under the leadership of Andy Gitzloff and Ramsey County Public Employee Administrator Randy Gitzloff and Ramsey County Commissioner Vicki Reinhardt, they want to bulldoze that up and spend up from $500 million to $1 billion to lay thousands of tons of concrete and decimate all the trees, which is a beautiful gateway right now. I agree with the last caller, Ms. Chair, that you're an expert on engineering mechanics, and the chair of the Metropolitan Council, Chairman Zelli, is an expert on buses. And I think the other caller had it absolutely right. To build the BRT would be better put on Highway 61, which is all set up to accept it. Not only will it be far less expensive, but it will actually hold the use, because it is where commercial and business properties are, where you could have good paying, long-term sustainable jobs. Putting up to $1 billion bus route down the Bruce Vento Nature Trail is just going in through people's backyards next to swing sets, and it will be hard for developers to assemble those projects right along that. And everyone should go and look at the Bruce Vento Nature Trail and see how wonderful and what an amenity it is to Maplewood. Mr. Andy Gitzloff, the Ramsey County Public Employee Administrator, who is running this, as you mentioned, Ms. Chair, for Ramsey County is running it for Metropolitan Councils. He often refuses. He has a community advisory. He has a community advisory board. You can see that at rushline.org. And he often fails or refuses to post the agenda of the Community Access Board, CAB board. And sometimes he actually doesn't even put the meeting times up, like the one in November of 2019, after they had a committee go to Richmond, Virginia, to see the Pulse, the Richmond bus rapid transit, which is in a totally different area that's run down Main Street across the by the University of Virginia, by medical centers, by all kinds of commercial businesses. He refuses to, Mr. Andy Gifloff, he refuses to post generally the minutes of the meetings, which the CAB has, and he refuses to cablecast the meetings so that people can see exactly what the planning is all about. Now, even when they had a Zoom meeting after COVID-19, where it's easy to record the meeting, he refused, although asked, to put that up on the website so other people could evaluate it. Not only that is the Technical Access Advisory Committee, he refuses to let any of the public attend that, or any minutes of that, or in the agenda or that, or even the time when they meet. So just be very suspicious of the information you get from the Ramsey County Rush Line, because their only data, which they refuse to release the raw data, are from these pop-up meetings, which, and I have attended them, very few people attended. And from my experience attending multiple ones, everyone attends is pretty much against. So that's, again, my main point that I would like to just get across. I know what you need to do is that you need to simplify all this complex information that you're getting from other government entities so you have reasonable solutions. And I propose, like the other caller, that the reasonable solution, if you want to use that money and have a building project, is to use it somewhere where people will be able to get to good paying, sustainable jobs, because even though that other project is going through backyards and is supposed to be a streamline from downtown St. Paul to Maplewood Mall, and then go back to Highway 61 or go to White Bear Lake on Highway 61, that is slower. That is slower from St. Paul to Maplewood Mall than using the regular slow bus system that is available. So again, Ms. Chair, I want to thank you for your leadership, and I want to thank you for having these public comment accessible through your meetings. Again, thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I will take them. Otherwise, I will try to continue to listen. Again,
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Chair.
Yep, thank you for your comments.
I don't see any other hands raised at this time.
Okay. Are there others on the line who are wanting to make comments today? I'm going to make sure and give it another round, make sure there's no one else on the line who wants to make a comment today. I'm checking for raised hands one more time before we switch gears. All right, we did have some additional people signed up, so I'm going to ask one last time before we switch over to the Transportation Committee meeting. I want to ensure that that there wasn't anyone else on the line who wanted to make a comment. If you do, if you could use the raise hand feature in your All right, seeing no other comments, I did want to let you know that we are continuing to take public comment during this time, even though not through this meeting, but we will continue to receive public comment through 5 p.m. on August 10th. You can write the council at 390 Roberts Street North, St. Paul, Minnesota 55101. You can email the council at public.info@metc.ca www.state.mn.us. And you can also record a comment on the public comment line at 651-602-1500, TTY of 651-291-0904. At the close of the public comment process, staff will prepare a summary of comments along with a revised draft. This item is currently scheduled for consideration by the full council later this year. So before we formally close the public hearing, I'm going to ask one more time, just because we do run through adventures in technology sometimes. I wanted to see if there were any final comments. Jen, did you see anybody else with raised hands?
I do not.
All right, thank you very much. So thank you for participating in this portion of the meeting. The public comment portion of the Transportation Committee meeting is now complete. So we are going to move on to our Transportation Committee business meeting. Because we have had some additional council members join us, I would like to initiate first by having Becky call the roll one more time.
Atlas Ingebretson. Atlas Ingebretson.
She is here, but we may be still in a position where some of the panel members are muted. I don't.
Hear me now?
Yep.
We can, thank you.
Okay, I am here.
Thank you. Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings.
Can you hear me? I'm here.
Oh,
We
yep.
can hear you.
Okay, I'm here.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Here.
Sterner. Zirin.
I'm here, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows I was listening for the entire comment period. I was here for that.
Yes, thank you. I would say I think there are a few other council members that were here, but were unable to respond at the beginning too. So I will make sure that we get that noted in the information on the public meeting. So, all right. So then moving. So with that, I will call to order the meeting of the Metropolitan Council Transportation Committee for July 13th, 2020. Our first item of business tonight is approval of the agenda. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? If not, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved by Gonzalez.
Moved by Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Coming second.
Second by Cummings. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson. Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner. Zirin.
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye. With that, the agenda is approved. Please note that actually item 3 on our agenda, we moved ahead while we were making sure all of our council members were being able to be heard. So we're moving on to business or item number 4, which is approval of the minutes from the June 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Transportation Committee. Did anyone have any changes or additions to the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved by Gonzalez.
Moved by Gonzalez. Is there a second?
Seconded by Zirin.
Seconded by Zarin. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Becky, could you call the roll, please?
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner, Zieren,
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye. With that, the minutes are approved. Now we're going to go on to reports. First, we have MTS Director Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few updates. Like this meeting we had tonight, just a reminder that the next Transportation Committee on the 27th of July, we'll have a public hearing for the Transportation Policy Plan, the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan. And so that will also be at the beginning of the Transportation Committee meeting on July 27th. That has been noticed in the paper, and there'll be several communications reminding public of an opportunity for public comment at that July 27th Transportation Committee hearing. The regional solicitation process continues for scoring of applications. All committees are, with our local partners, are currently reviewing applications. TAB themselves will not be having a meeting in July, so there'll be no TAB update to this committee for any July. In terms of our contracted transit update, we continue to have our operations, COVID-related operation levels. We continue to see slight growth in ridership in Metro Mobility and Transit Link, though it is still very low ridership as those rides remain as essential travel only. We continue to provide food shelf delivery and essential healthcare worker delivery on those services, and will continue into the near future. One change that we are anticipating affecting Metro Mobility is last Friday into today, the state did allow adult daycare and training and habilitation centers to open up with some new conditions, and that is a large portion of our Metro Mobility ridership. About 10% of the normal rides have been occurring for those type of services, and now we do expect that to grow. This opening is very important for those customers that are part of that program and for the providers, and we fully believe that we can provide a safe transportation services for them with the protocols that we have in place for bus cleaning and social distancing and masks and other barriers. So we're ready to serve that population as they're beginning to reopen. And with that reopening, we expect that we transition some of our Metro Mobility food shelf delivery service over to Transit Link as the ridership grows, but we're prepared to do that also. In terms of our workforce on our contractors are doing daily checks of all employees of drivers as they arrive at work for temperature checks. We continue to offer and cover COVID testing for employees of our that are operating under our contracts. I can say some positive news that last week we had 0 positive COVID tests among contracted employees. So that's some good news there. And our contractors are reporting no issues with providing the staff levels needed to meet our contract transit needs. With that, Madam Chair, concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Are there any questions from council members? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to General Manager Koistra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start with speak a little bit about how we're continuing to turn the dial at Metro Transit as part of our COVID response. Beginning last week, we transitioned from essential travel only message to Stay Safe Minnesota messages. Our essential travel only message is really based upon the governor's original order that identified specific essential workers to which we were providing service to and trying to limit our service to. And now as the governor has adjusted his language, we're trying to adjust our language with that. I will point out that we are still asking our transit customers to use other modes of transportation if they have them available to get to their location of work. But this recognizes that as the governor has opened up businesses and allowed places of work to reestablish themselves, that we are a service that some people rely entirely on to get to their workplace. So we're starting to see a modest uptick in ridership, particularly on bus. Ridership for the week of June 29 through July 5, the system was down about 63% total compared to pre-pandemic levels. I think when we were at the lowest ridership, our system was down in the neighborhood of 70% system-wide, 71, 72%. So this is an improvement. Bus is down 57%. I think at its worst, it was down 69%. Blue Line is down 79%. And Green Line is down 69%. And Light Rail at one point was down around 85%. And North Star continues to be down 98%. So we're starting to see a very modest return to service, and it is modest and it is slow, but it's moving the right direction, and we're still in a place where we think we can responsibly manage the social distancing standards that we've set up in our service structure. We're also preparing to transition away from rear door boarding on August 1st. But first, we need to complete the installation of plexiglass barriers to separate operators from customers and to provide an added layer of protection. We have barriers in some of our buses that are permanent barriers that were being installed and will continue to be installed as more come in. But we're adding some additional temporary barriers so that there's a separation between the operator and the rider who is front door boarding and perhaps using the fare box to make their fare payment. I want to emphasize that what's not changing is our commitment to reducing risks for our operators and riders. We're continuing daily enhanced cleaning and disinfecting. We continue to require facial coverings while riding transit. We're maintaining onboard capacity limits on buses. We're adding services and prioritizing the use of articulated buses on routes that are experiencing relatively high ridership to further allow for social distancing. I'll mention here that I know that when we say we're at 65% service levels right now, that some people might assume that that's a 65%, that's a 40 or 35% reduction across the board. It's not the way the reductions are managed. We manage service reductions based upon demand and ridership, so that in a 65% scenario, there will be more reductions in the express routes because of lower ridership demand, and there'll be higher service levels in the local routes because of higher service demands. In fact, someone mentioned to me that that our 21 route is receiving about 111% or more service than what it was receiving during normal service hours, and that again is to accommodate our social distancing standards. We'll continue to closely monitor the governor's orders and public health guidance and ridership patterns and other factors as we determine when and how to turn the dial in the future. And when we get to the presentation of the transit budget next meeting, we'll talk more about those assumptions. But we know that more than anything, we're in a place of unknown. So we do the best we can at providing estimates of ridership and estimates of fare box recovery, and certainly tend to the forecast of MVEST. But in the end, we're in a place where we haven't been before, and if nothing else, the projections are volatile. I also want to mention that we've continued to distribute masks to riders. As I've shared with you in email, we continue to distribute masks at high ridership boarding locations. Last week we were out again doing this, and now we have distributed about 24,000 masks in total to members of the public. That includes 2,000 at the June 20 donation drive, 10,000 during the first mask giveaway on June 25th and 26th, and then 12,000 more masks last week. So we're continuing to do that as masks are available. And with that, Madam Chair, I've completed my report and open to questions if there are any.
Thank you, General Manager. Are there questions from council members?
I'm not sure if, well, this is Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson, if I could share.
Go ahead, Councilmember.
I'd just like to request at future meetings, and whether it's at the transportation or at committee council meetings, that we also get an update related to just a tracking number. And I'm okay if it's a trend, like we're trending up or we're trending down or we're staying the same on impact or of numbers of staff who have tested positive for COVID, just so we can make sure we're paying attention to that. And it'd just be nice to kind of have that really clearly articulated.
Mhm. We are
Throughout
emailed
the-
that information in a report once a week, and hopefully you're getting it. So I'll make sure you are.
Maybe I missed that, but I think it'd be good also for the public to know that, hear that. I know we've heard it at each of our meetings, but I think it'd just be good for public access to that information as well. And I'd also like us to start getting a weekly report about any stops or complaints with our police as a part of this, the Metro Transit Police. So I'm happy to, I know we're having a conversation tomorrow about that, but I just want to ask for that on the record in this context.
Wes, did you have any comments? I think we can talk about that with the chair for your second one. For the first one, like I said, the numbers do get reported out. They're in one of our email updates we get at least weekly. So we'll make sure we have that information for you. All right, did anybody have any other questions or comments from council members?
This is Councilmember Raymond Zarin.
Go ahead, Councilmember Zarin.
Thank you for the acknowledgement. I am having some issues with my technology today, so I don't know what's quite happening, but I just want to get that out there before I ask a question of our manager, Koistra. I'm just wondering, you talked about the plexiglass barriers going up and moving away from rear door boarding. Is that 100% going to be plexiglass barriers? And has there anything, is there any accommodations for the drivers that may have a sense of claustrophobia? Has that been addressed, or is that an issue? Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Zarin, the reason that we are waiting till August 1 is because that's the date that I've been given that we will have all the plexiglass barriers in place before front door boarding. And with respect to the second part of the question about concerns about operators, I've not heard of that. I'll ask that question when I get to the operations staff, but I've not heard of that being an issue, or if it is an issue, what accommodations are being made in that regard. I think we're trying to do the best we can for the safety of both our riders and operators, but I know there's some unique situations that we always have to manage through. I understand.
So just to follow up, if I may, so we're going to go to 100% barrier.
Madam Chair, I want to clarify that we had been ordering operator barriers that were permanent barriers, and those were being installed as they were being received. And I think we had, my numbers, please don't hold me to this, but I think there was 170 more that were expected to come in this year to be installed. But I may not be exactly right. But I think my point is they were going to be installed as they were. And these are permanent barriers. I think the barriers, I know that the barriers that we're adding now are temporary barriers that were designed by our maintenance staff and made of aluminum frames and plexiglass. They're not intended only for use during the COVID event, and not intended as a permanent barrier. So there's two separate programs. I don't know if that distinction, maybe that's a distinction without a difference, but I just wanted to clarify that these are temporary barriers that we're trying to get in by August 1, and we are still on another schedule for the permanent barriers.
All right, thank you.
Chair Barber, I had a comment.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I just wanted to clarify that while we are getting reports of staff that have contracted COVID and any complications with that, we are not getting the trend information on a regular basis. And I believe that that's what Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen was looking for, the trend information.
Okay, I can go ahead.
I'll just say, Madam Chair, I can pass that along. Look, I'm going to mention on that regard of the trend information and that data, that what we report is any employee who has been verified to have contracted the virus. I will say from our own experience, many of the employees, not most, appear to have not to have contracted the virus at work in our experience here, and we can tell that by the last day that they were on site to the day their symptoms occurred. You can't always say that with absolute confidence, but that's what appears to us. So I just want to say that we'll get we can get that information out, but interpreting that information is important to know that is not necessarily that virus is not necessarily contracted at the work site.
And if you could take a look at the information that is provided, it provides by division, new cases, total to date, return to work, and current active. If there is something different that you want, let us know.
Chair, if I could, this is Councilmember Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Of course, go ahead.
Thanks for clarifying that, Councilmember Chambliss. And yes, I think part of it is just helping people to understand what are we trending, and having that just be a quick part of the report for those who listen in to these calls as the public. I think that would be the piece of information that's helpful. And it's so hard to prove where someone contracted. I don't think we can say definitively one way or the other. So I don't know that really matters.
Madam Chair, I have an update on some information before. This is the benefit of text. We're having I said 170. We're having 170 permanent barriers coming in, and to Councilmember Zern's question, the Deputy Chief Operating Officer just told me that there's been no reports that he's aware of people being concerned about claustrophobia.
Perfect. Well, I think that addressed the barrier question, and I will reach out to the Regional Administrator's Office about information that we put out about COVID, because I think it's important across all divisions to have that information out there. All right. Any other questions from council members? All right, Wes, I did have one question for you. So you presented information on ridership now and talked about the numbers on the LRTs. One question I had relative to that was, is this just factoring like comparable numbers year to year of the differences? Because clearly some of our big ridership in the summer months comes from baseball and things like that, the activities that aren't happening, or is it is it a comparison of what you would expect in a normal month minus special events, or are we factoring that in anywhere when we talk about it?
Madam Chair, my understanding is these are month-to-month comparisons.
Okay.
And if I find out that I'm wrong about that, I'll clarify that in an email.
Sure.
And
Just curious.
Madam Chair, this is Ed Petrie, Metro Transit Finance. Mr. Cloister is correct. These are month-to-month comparisons that we were doing compared to what we had forecasted ridership to be for each respective month.
Okay, thank you. That does help, because then it does factor in some of those bigger events. Not to say that ridership isn't down, but it also, helps we want to make sure that the system is moving the people around who need to get to work and things like that and all of that. So I just sort of wanted to get it all the context together. So
That's correct.
very good. Thank you. All right. One last call. Any other questions or comments from council members? All right, then if not, we move on to our next item of business, which is the consent agenda. There are 2 items on consent. I'd entertain a motion to approve the items on consent.
Cummings, motion to approve.
Thank you. Motion by Cummings. Is there a second?
Good, Chair Barbara.
I'm sorry. Could you say that one more time?
Yes, this is Sterner, and I would second that motion.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. All right. So seconded by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin.
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye. With that, the consent agenda is approved. Next, we go on to our first item of business, which is business item 2020-182, a joint item, the 2020 budget amendment. I believe we have Ed Petrie here to present. I'll
Yes.
then present the business item.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Committee members. Ed Petrie with Metro Transit Finance, Director of Finance, and I have with me
Heather Augustin-Hebner, Finance Director for MTS.
and Chair Heather and I. We will first go through a presentation that'll talk about the CARES Act, give kind of a primer on the CARES Act and how we're distributing the funds and how we're going to bring it into the budgets. And then after that, then we will then move into the budget amendment. So next slide. First of all, just to give a quick overview on the CARES Act. First of all, it was signed into law on March 27, 2020. The total federal CARES Act was just over $2 trillion, of which there was a subset for transit infrastructure grants, which was approximately $25 billion across the nation. Of that, Minnesota was allocated $308 million in transit infrastructure grants. That was broken out to the urban area, which came to the council for just over $226 million. Then $82 million went to Greater Minnesota MnDOT. The FTA requires grant applications to access all the CARES funds. So Heather and I are working on respective grant. We worked on the grant application, the original grant application, which was submitted to the FTA on April 30th. And they approved it within 30 days. It was approved on April 29th. A very fast turnaround by the FTA. Next slide. One of the things with the CARES Act is that the grantees must follow the old federal grant rules and guidelines. And we fully anticipate, first of all, every 3 years we go through a triennial review with the FTA. Our next one is slated for the summer of 2021. So we do know that there will be a lot of questions on the use of the CARES Act money, but we also know that once the grant is done and closed, we will also be subject to audit by the FTA. One important note is with the subrecipient monitors, with the out of the $226 million that came to the council, 214 stayed with council transit operations. Just over $12 million was allocated to the regional transit providers, and the council approved that back on June 24th. And currently, Heather is working with the regional providers on their respective grants. The monies going to the regional providers will be via subrecipient monitoring grant agreements, of which the council, as a result, the council is directly responsible for the use of the funds. So as the suburban providers want to use the funds, we will have to review their use for eligibility to ensure we're compliant with the grant. Some of the positive things with the grants is they're 100% federal, do not require any local match. It went back to January 20th of 2020 and thereafter for eligible expenses. And the good thing is the funds are available until expended. As with our presentation, as you'll find out, we are anticipating that the council operations, we will expend our CARES Act funds in calendar years 20 and 2021. Next slide. So with the allocation methodology nationally, the allocations came to all designated recipients, and it was based upon federal formula dollars. So what they did on a nationalized basis is they looked at what was allocated across the nation for 5307 funds, and they used that weighted distribution to allocate the CARES Act money. Because the CARES Act money is coming to the council and is coming across the nation as 5307 funds. Generally, the council receives about $50 million in 5307 funds on an annualized basis. That's based off of cost reports that we actually file with the NTD, National Transit Database, where we report our hours and our miles and our expenses and revenues and passengers. And then they will then use that data weighted across the nation and allocate the 5307 funds. So that weighting was the basis that they used to weight and distribute the money across the nation and to the council. Regionally, we use that same formula distribution then. We use the weighting of the 5307 money from fiscal year 2020 and then did that allocation, allocating the weighted portion to the regional providers and the weighted portion to the council. Next slide.
Okay, so I'm Heather again with MTS. What this slide really does is just lays out what that regional, more specifically, what that regional distribution looks like. So you'll see that the Metropolitan Council has the 214 million Ed talked about, and all of the regional providers have a share also. We've been really actively working with all of the suburban transit providers. I know many of them reside in geographies that you represent. We have a SharePoint site set up with a lot of resources. We've been trying to work with them to do some early prep. So when they're ready to submit reimbursement requests, we can get funding in their hands as fast as we can. We do have a lot of experience passing through federal funds. So we're we've got a lot of really good established practices. And so far things are going fairly smoothly. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the next level down. So we distributed the funds across all the providers. Now we wanted to look at how do we need to allocate this across the council. What we really ended up doing is a pretty simple approach. And we looked at where the COVID-induced impacts are having on our revenue, and that's passenger fares and motor vehicle sales tax. And that's how we distributed the CARES Act amongst the funds. And that is what you are going to see in tonight's budget amendment. Next slide, please.
So overall, with the council summary, we have an allocation strategy. First of all, we wanted to be consistent with the CARES Act goals of supporting the COVID-induced financial challenges. As we had talked about, lost fare revenue, lost motor vehicle sales tax, and then on the expense side, all the additional costs that we're incurring on the maintenance side, including maintenance salaries, all the supplies that we are incurring and expending to maintain and clean our buses and trains on a daily basis. We wanted to be very clear and transparent how we were transferring it or distributing it across the council modes. We wanted to make it easy to explain, but our ultimate goal was to balance our budgets within calendar years 20 and 21. So the methodology that we're using within the council using lost revenues is a mechanism that we feel will help us to balance our budgets through calendar years 20 and 2021. On July 27th, Heather and I will be coming back to the Transportation Committee and doing a presentation of our preliminary proposed 2021 budgets. But right now we feel that with how we're allocating the CARES Act money, we can balance ourselves in 20, balance ourselves in 2021. Right now we're preliminary anticipating that we'll use about $140 million of the CARES Act in calendar year 20. We will use the balance of $74 million in calendar year 21. And then for the rest of the year, we will then balance our budgets through the use of targeted reserve balances. Madam Chair and committee members, I think you can recall over the last few years, we knew we had a fiscal cliff coming. So the council was prudently building reserves to adhere to and to help balance towards that fiscal cliff. So we're very happy that we had built the reserves. So with the one-time use of the one-time funds of CARES Act and with the one-time use of reserves in 2021, we feel we should be able to get our transit operations through December 31st of 2021. Some of the other items that we're doing, as Wes had talked about earlier, that we're looking at some cost containment, like running our service, for example, bus operations at 80%, which will save a little bit of money. We're also looking at some administrative reductions, administrative cost reductions in calendar years 20 and 2021. But as we had talked about previously, we had a fiscal cliff as of about July 1st of 2021. We feel with the use of the CARES Act money, with receiving that, and then with our balance of reserves that we have, that we're able to push that fiscal cliff back to about January 1st of 2022. So with that, Chair, committee members, Heather and I would stand for any questions on the presentation, or we can move forward into the budget amendment.
Thank you, Ed and Heather. Are there any questions from council members?
Madam Chair, this is Molly Cummings.
Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm wondering, can you give us a rough idea of what you anticipate the fiscal cliff in 22 is at this point based on your expectations today?
Madam Chair, committee members, that is one of the things that we actually had a meeting with the chair about an hour ago. And that's one of the challenges that we have right now. We're trying to do some estimates right now, but there's two big factors that we don't know what they are right now. One of them is the motor vehicle sales tax. The state of Minnesota has given us a forecast for motor vehicle sales tax through June 30th of 2021, saying it's down 17%. They have not gone on record for forecasting any additional motor vehicle sales tax beyond that. The other big risk that we have in our budget, or that we will have in our budget in 2021, is passenger fares. Because right now we're like, as Mr. Koester had mentioned, we're assuming that our passenger fares are down about 64% in calendar years 20 and 21. But as of this point in time, until we get more experience under our belt and until more of the service starts coming back, we don't really know what the passenger fares are going to be. So you can see we have the point that we're using one-time funds in excess of over $125 million in 2021. I would assume that our fiscal cliff would be north of $125 million.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Wes. I wanted just to add a comment that what the figures that Ed just recited about the use of one-time money does not include one-time money being used by Metro Mobility and other parts of the Metro Council transit system. So that's Metro Transit only. There's additional one-time money and additional fiscal cliff, significant fiscal cliff with Metro Mobility that is growing in ridership typically, and has the same situation as Metro Transit.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions? Comments? All right. Ed and Heather, go ahead with. Oh, pardon me. Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I appreciate for the update with this council summary. As I said recently, we get asked about how are we doing, and the forecasting and the strategic management of due to COVID is very helpful. And I appreciate the question by our other council member on, what are our plans for handling the anticipated fiscal cliff. So I look forward to getting more updates like this and, seeing how our state folks address the issues that we're expecting in terms of financial needs.
And Chair, committee members, Chair, could I add another comment?
Of course.
Yes. Chair, committee members, thank you very much for your comments. One thing I do want to make a comment about is on the 2021 budget. As I mentioned, Heather and I will come to the committee on July 27th and do our preliminary presentation to the committee. We will give you any updates that we know as of that point in time, motor vehicle sales tax or fares, or passenger revenue and fares. We will then be coming back to the council on August 12th and I believe the 26th, doing another council roll-up of the 2021 budgets. It will then go up for public hearing, but before the council then adopts in December, we will be coming back again and discussing probably in the November timeline, November, early December timeline, any additional changes that we know as of that point in time, whether it's motor vehicle sales tax or passenger fares. So we will have many opportunities to talk with you and keep you updated as we learn more information about what our future looks like.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So Chair, should we proceed with the amendment?
All right, so we'll give one more check for questions and then we'll move to the amendment. Anyone else? All right, Ed and Heather, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Heather and I once again are here to present the 2020 budget amendment. We're calling it the July budget amendment. And we have a number of changes in here this evening. First of all, we have changes in both the capital and the operating budget. And we're also then going to discuss our first portion of bringing a CARES Act money into the 2020 operating budget. So on the capital side, I will discuss Metro Transit. I will go through the capital items and the CARES Act items and stand for questions. And then I will then turn it over to Heather and she can go through MTS. So with that, Madam Chair, first of all, on the budget presentation on the capital side for Metro Transit, this includes adjustments to the capital budget. The projects that we're recommending for bringing in this evening are all projects that were in the council adopted CIP that the council adopted back in December. Funding, federal funding has now become available. We applied for the federal grants. They have now come in and approved. So now we're ready to bring those projects in. A number of the projects include moving projects. The projects include moving them from the CIP into the authorized capital plan. Some of the projects include the LRT Blue enhancements to replace track and signal components in Bloomington, and some North Star track repairs and replacement at Target Field to maintain both the Blue Line and North Star or Blue Line, Green Line, and North Star in a state of good repair. We have bus repair associated capital maintenance projects for the purchase of parts, repair, and installation to keep our buses in a state of good repair. We have funds for the replacement of hoists, because we have a 4-year hoist program at our respective garages. This is 1 year in that plan. We're bringing in $7 million for the D line, which is federal CMAQ funds. We had a federal CMAQ award a few years ago. Bringing in those funds, that will be for advanced station construction on the D line along Emerson and Fremont Avenue. We have some bringing in funding for our North Star equipment storage buildings. Bringing in some funding for preliminary engineering and specifications for our other garages outside of the New Minneapolis bus garage. As we move forward with bus electrification, we're just going to do some early engineering and specs to identify what would need to be done at the other garages as we move forward with electrification. We're bringing in funds for the New Minneapolis bus garage for construction of the New Minneapolis bus garage. And we have various light rail and North Star maintenance projects to keep the system in a state of good repair. Overall, Chair Committee members, the total projects for Metro Transit include a change to the 2020 capital budget of just over $26.1 million. And as I stated, Chair Committee members, the funding is now available. So we're moving these projects, these $26 million worth of projects from the CIP into the capital budget. And with that, Madam Chair Committee members, I'd stand for any questions on the capital piece from Metro Transit.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from council members for Ed? All right, hearing and seeing none. Heather, go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair, I will move forward first of all with the operating piece for Metro Transit.
Oh, sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Not a problem.
I apologize.
That's fine. So the operating piece for Metro Transit is made up of 3 different components. I have changes for Metro Transit bus operations, for the Metro Blue Line, the blue and green rail lines, and for North Star. And you're going to see a similar trend in my changes. You'll see the same thing on Heather's. On Metro Transit bus operations, we have a change of revenues of just over $7,393,000, an equal change in expenses of $7,393,000, and no change in reserves. What makes up the change this evening? First of all, we're recognizing the decrease. We've talked about that our ridership is down about 64%. We are then recognizing the decrease in revenues in calendar year 2020 of just over $40.2 million. Recognizing a decrease in advertising revenues of about $400,000. We had received a brand new forecast from the state of Minnesota for motor vehicle sales tax. Historically, I believe you're aware, we always receive a forecast in February and November. But with the changing, with the COVID impact, the state of Minnesota gave us a brand new forecast on May 4th for pushing out or identifying what they identified as motor vehicle sales taxes from then through June 30th of 2021. So we're recognizing just over a $39.4 million decrease in motor vehicle sales taxes, a decrease in our motor vehicle sales tax transfers of $19.3 million, and an increase in our additional cleaning costs for all the cleaning and the wiping and all those items on the buses to keep them clean of just under $7.4 million. With that, that's a total change of just over $106.8 million. We are bringing in $106.8 million of CARES Act money in Metro Transit bus operations to balance it. Light rail operations has a change in revenues of $1,409,000, a change in expenses of $1,409,000, no change in reserves. It's similar to bus. We're recognizing a decrease in passenger fares of $17.5 million, decrease in advertising revenues of $195,000, an increase in cleaning costs of $1.4 million. We are then balancing it through the use of $19.1 million worth of CARES Act money. Commuter rail operations, the same theme. Change in revenues of $395,000, expenses $395,000, no change in reserves. And we are recognizing a decrease in passenger fares of $1.9 million, an increase in cleaning costs of just under $400,000, and with commuter rail, again, balancing it with CARES Act money of $2.3 million. And with that, Madam Chair, committee members, I would stand for any questions on Metro Transit, the operating portion of the amendment.
All right, thank you, Ed. Any questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none. Now I'll move to Heather.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. MTS is requesting to bring in just under $3.6 million into our authorized capital program. Like Metro Transit and Ed just described, we're bringing in funds from the Capital Improvement Plan or the CIP into the authorized budget. We're requesting to take two primary actions tonight. First, we want to bring in about $675,000 to replace existing transit master system on Transit Link buses. This item was in the CIP. The second is that the council historically brings in suburban transit provider federal formula earnings in the form of RTC or regional transit capital bonds into the authorized capital program once funds become available. These funds are placed in a project that you will see on the business item called undesignated and are then moved to specific projects as suburban transit providers identify them. We do this so their projects aren't delayed by our administrative processes. This amendment will authorize just over $2.9 million for future Maple Grove, MVTA, Plymouth, and Southwest Transit capital projects. Funds will be passed through using grant agreements, and you will see specific projects in future administrative adjustments. So what we're really asking you to do tonight is to authorize the funds, and then that gives the suburban providers the flexibility to use them as they identify projects, rather than them having to follow our administrative calendars. And with that, I will pause for just a moment for any questions, and then I will continue on to the operating side.
All right, any questions from council members? All right, seeing and hearing none, go ahead.
Thank you. So on the operating side, it's going to look very similar to Metro Transit. We're going to bring in $700,000 of MVEST reserves or motor vehicle sales tax reserves and $11.5 million of federal CARES Act funds to replace an equal reduction of passenger fares and reduced MVEST to reflect the May 2020 motor vehicle sales tax forecast. So just as we've lost $1 in revenue, we're replacing it with $1 of federal CARES Act funding. In summary, the proposed amendment programs available federal, state, other, and regional funds into the unified budget to allow the council to carry out its work plan and long-term capital program. The amendment demonstrates commitment towards asset preservation and also supports the Thrive outcome of stewardship by assessing the future needs, responsible planning, and management of resources for both Metro Transit and Metropolitan Transportation Services. This budget amendment adds funding for the D line and reflects strategic investment in regional infrastructure that will promote economic competitiveness and create prosperity for the region. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Heather. Any questions on MTS? All right, hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-182, the joint week or joint item.
Chair, this is Sterner. I make a motion to approve the item.
Okay, motion made by Sterner. Is there a second?
Zarin seconds.
Seconded by Zarin. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson. Atlas Ingebretson. Chambliss.
Aye.
This is Atlas Ingebretson. Aye.
Thank you. Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin.
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Now we're on to business item number 2020-196, which is agency safety plans. And we have Jerry Sutton and Mike Conlon here.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Michael Conlon. I serve as Director of Rail and Bus Safety. And also with us, Jerry Sutton, Assistant Director, Metropolitan Transportation Services. We're here this afternoon to discuss our request for your approval of the Metropolitan Transportation Services and Metro Transit Public Transportation Agency Safety Plans. And specifically, the request is that the council approves the Metropolitan Transportation Services and Metro Transit Agency Safety Plans in order to comply with FTA Rule 49-673. And we'll tell you more about that as we move through this very short presentation. So it's the council approval is required due to this new rulemaking. And primarily, it says that all transit agencies that receive federal assistance must establish a public transportation agency safety plan, and further, that these agency safety plans must be signed by the accountable executive and approved by the agency's board of directors. And that would be the Transportation Committee, beginning at the Transportation Committee and ending at the council. And the agency safety plans, they must document the processes and activities related to safety management system implementation. The plans that you have in your packages would actually outline in the table of contents. You need go no further than the table of contents to see that that there's a great deal of safety management systems in all of our departments. It's a shared responsibility, everything from human resources, how we hire, to how we train, to how we investigate, to how we generate emergency preparedness planning, new project certification. It goes on. So we talked about the accountable executives. Here, for our purposes, we have two separate transit operations, if you will, within the same agency, and therefore two accountable executives. On the right-hand side of the slide, you see that the accountable executive is a person who has ultimate responsibility for carrying out the safety plans and the asset management plans, and who also has control and direction over the human and capital resources that they need to do that. In this organization, that would be Wes Koistra for Metro Transit and Nick Thompson for Metropolitan Transportation Services. Each one of our agency safety plans addresses 4 main topics and then supported by many other subtopics or items that would be safety management policy, risk management, assurance, and promotion. And whatever the format and the names of our agency safety plans in the past, this is our path forward to be compliant with the plan. Or with the rule, excuse me. I'll say a few words about Metro Transit's agency safety plans and then turn it over to Ms. Sutton. Our agency safety plans, compliant, have been in place for bus and LRT modes since July 2019. We did that of our own volition, of our own initiative at Metro Transit to test drive them, to see how they work. The predecessors, known as system safety program plans, have been in place since the early 2000s. The LRT system safety program plan, the first one was put in place in 2000, shortly after I arrived, and has continued to be updated every year since then. Bus mode, first system safety program plan was in 2005, and commuter rail 2008, before we commenced passenger operations in commuter rail. So this is not the first time we've been thinking of applying and implementing and integrating system safety and safety management systems into what we do. This is a new format, and the board is required to approve them at this time. Whereas in the past, it was the general manager, or if you will, the accountable executive, was the highest approval needed. I would also say that we checked these by generating a gap analysis tool. The fancy word for we generated a table. We split the rule up into all of its little parts and made each one a line item, and then checked our plans to make sure that they satisfied, at least to our thinking, the requirement in the rule. And we also have, to avoid what I call practical drift, which is the difference between what we do and what we say we do. To minimize that difference, we have companion audit plans for each of these safety plans, and they the schedule there is that all of the items, there would be some item, there would be some sort of auditing of each one of the items that you might see in the table of contents, which is way more than a table of contents, within a 3-year period. And yes, auditing of these plans has begun for the agency safety plans, the first year of 3. And now I would turn it over to Jerry.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. This slide covers MTS contracted services to include fixed route, Metro Mobility, and Transit Link. MTS contractors had safety plans that incorporated many elements of the requirements found in 49 CFR 673, but minor modifications were necessary to be fully compliant. MTS, with assistance from WSP Consulting, worked with each contractor to make the necessary updates. The most significant change for MTS is the transition from a decentralized safety management approach to a centralized approach, with oversight provided by a newly created MTS Chief Safety Officer. This position will be responsible for documenting the processes and activities related to safety management systems for contracted transit services. The agency safety plans promote multiple Thrive MSP 2040 outcomes. Equity and livability are supported through the plan's focus on strategies to ensure a safe transit infrastructure, the safe transport of all customers, and promote the well-being of employees. The plan's role in mitigating risk and promoting proactive planning to responsibly manage the region's finite resources fosters the outcome of stewardship. The proposed action is that the Metropolitan Council adopt agency safety plans for Metropolitan Transportation Services, Metro Transit Bus, and Metro Transit LRT. And with that, we will take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mike and Jerry. Are there any questions from council members? Hearing none, I would entertain. Go ahead, Councilmember Ingebrigtsen.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, at our previous meeting, we had conversations around who, and I believe it was Councilmember Ferguson brought up who the police chief reports to. Is that outside of this safety plan, or was the beginning slides an attempt to respond to the conversation we had around that and the state statute conversation related to, is it in state statute how our organization is organized as it relates to who the chief reports to?
Madam Chair, this is Wes. I can respond. This safety plan and the presentation wasn't in any way an attempt to respond to that. I don't think it I'll let Mike correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it engages in the police part of the organization.
It's my understanding that these specific plans are specific to requirements to comply with FTA. The other conversations about the reporting structure for the police is outside of this conversation.
Thank you for that clarity.
All right, are there additional questions? All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item number 2020-196.
So moved, Zarin.
Moved by Zarin. Is there a second?
Second by Sterner.
Second by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? All right, before we actually take the roll, I'm going to make a quick comment. So Mike Conlon has been with us for quite some time. He's been with us for over 20 years, and he's retiring on August 3rd. And so I just want to say thank you very much for your service to Metro Transit. And I also had somebody who may have dropped me a text that your birthday's tomorrow too, so happy birthday. So, but thank you so much. We appreciate people who stick with us for a long time and care about our organization. So thank you. So with that, we have a motion and a second. So Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebrigtsen.
Aye, and congratulations and good luck.
Chambliss.
Aye. Excuse me, aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye, and the motion carries. Thank you so much, and congratulations, Mike.
Thanks much. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And off to our next business item is business item 2020-193, ticket vending machine software upgrade. We have Nick Yule here.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair Barber and council members. My name is Nick Yule, and I'm the Senior Manager in Revenue Collections at Metro Transit. My team is responsible for the distribution of all prepaid transit fares, such as go-to cards, and the collection of all Metro Transit fare revenues, including supporting all fare collection equipment, such as ticket vending machines and bus fare boxes. We also work with the council's IS team to support back-end systems that facilitate fare payments. We collect about $100 million a year in passenger fares in the form of cash, go-to cards, tokens, mobile tickets, and many other ways that customers pay their fares. I'm here today to present business item 2020-193, which requests approval to award a sole source contract to Cubic Transportation Systems to provide new software and hardware to upgrade our ticket vending machines to Windows 10 for a cost not to exceed $4.1 million. The purpose of this work is to keep ticket vending machines compliant with payment card industry requirements. Payment card industry, or better known as PCI, those requirements were established about 20 years ago and are regularly updated to minimize the risk associated with accepting credit and debit cards. Ticket vending machines collected about $12 million in total revenues in 2019, and about 7.4 million of that, or roughly 60% of those payments, were made using credit cards. Credit cards are a popular way for customers to reload go-to cards and purchase tickets to events such as Twins or Vikings games, concerts, and many other events. Our credit card processing bank, Elavon, requires ticket vending machines to maintain PCI compliance. Windows 10 is the latest version of Windows by Microsoft, which many of you are probably familiar with. Our ticket vending machines, however, currently operate using Microsoft Windows 7. The version of Windows 7 the ticket vending machines use will no longer receive mainstream Microsoft security and patching support after October of 2020, which would make them non-compliant with PCI requirements. However, extended support is available through Microsoft to keep the ticket vending machines compliant for up to 3 years while this work is completed. So to summary, the work under this contract will do two things. First, Cubic will develop and provide hardware and software, allowing the ticket vending machines to work using Windows 10. TVMs were first installed in 2004 when we opened up Blue Line, and the last time the ticket vending machines were upgraded with new software and hardware was 2009. The ticket vending machines are basically very large, complex computers, and anyone with a computer older than 10 years knows that it's probably time for an upgrade. Second, this agreement will also provide for 1 year of extended support for Windows 7 through Microsoft, which will keep the ticket vending machines PCI compliant through October of 2021. This additional time will allow Metro Transit and Cubic to complete the development and install the new software and hardware. The software and hardware development will also include upgrading rail and bus rapid transit go-to card validators to Windows 10. Station validators are the devices on rail and bus rapid transit station where customers tap their go-to cards to pay their fares. These devices are also currently running on Windows 7. And while these devices, they don't process credit card payments and are not subject to PCI requirements, it is still important that these devices operate using a supported operating system to increase reliability and minimize security risks. One thing additional to note is that the work performed on this project will allow the ticket vending machines and station validators to run on a version of Windows that is currently supported through at least January of 2029. Cubic Transportation System manufactures the hardware for all go-to card devices, including ticket vending machines, station validators, and bus go-to card readers. They also develop and maintain the central data system. As a result, this will be a sole source contract with Cubic. The price has been analyzed and determined to be fair and reasonable based on comparisons to similar projects, including our most recent upgrade in 2009, and also by looking at what other Cubic customers are paying for similar upgrades. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Nick. Are there any questions from council members?
Councilmember Chambliss, please.
Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, Nick, I'm losing my voice a little bit. Regarding the updated hardware, with the processor and memory that's needed, is that the only hardware for this software upgrade that's needed? There's no, the external part of the machines are not going to be changed, right?
Madam Chair, Council Member, that's the bulk of the hardware. In addition to that device, the bill handling unit, the device in which customers insert their bills into the ticket vending machines to pay their fares or recharge their go-to card, those devices are also going to be obsolete in, I believe, 2023. So this development, it's a smaller piece of the overall development, but this development will allow us to start buying the new version of those bill handling units so that we can start to replace those over time as well.
Okay, thank you. I know we had heard about that in prior presentations, so that's the reason why I was asking. So that's good news. Thank you.
Great. Any additional questions? All right, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-193.
So moved. Zarin?
Moved by Zarin. Is there a second?
Second by Chambliss.
Second by Chambliss. Is there any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson. Atlas Ingebretson. Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin.
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye.
Atlas Ingebretson.
All right, I see she's on, but we do have enough to or approve the motion. So with that, business item 2020-193 is approved. And we'll, Becky, just keep an eye on the chat feature in case she's having audio problems and puts in something by chat.
Will do.
Thank you. Next, we're on to business item 2020-194, approval for body worn cameras. I believe Leah is here. Leah Palmer.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilmember Barber, and the rest of the Transportation Committee here. My name is Leah Palmer, and I'm here on behalf of the Metro Transit Police Department. We are presenting to you today a business item regarding the authorization to negotiate and execute a contract number 19P297 with Axon Enterprise Incorporated for body-worn cameras for a 5-year term in the amount not to exceed $2,026,099.14. Just to give you an idea of what that dollar amount is going to cover, we are looking for 220 Axon Body 3 cameras. That's the most recent model that Axon has developed, plus then 7 spare cameras in case of equipment failures or that sort of thing. This will cover all of our current full-time and part-time officers, as well as any upcoming new hires. We'll need 30 docking stations. The docking stations are at the end of their shift, the officers put the camera in there and it will both charge and allow the data to upload into the cloud-based system. It also includes camera mounts for the officer's uniform, some charging cables, and other sort of general accessories. Included in that $2 million ask is also unlimited storage on evidence.com. Again, that's the cloud-based system where all of the data, the video will be stored. We'll need 220 software licenses to go along with those cameras. It includes auto tagging, which is where Axon's system will integrate with our computer-aided dispatch system over at the Transit Control Center. And it includes information from those calls. So an officer gets dispatched to a call, it includes the case number, automatically puts the case number and some other details right into the video. It includes the redaction assistant. The redaction assistant will help us save time by being able to focus in on faces and various frames throughout the video where, say, a vulnerable victim or someone who isn't consent to having that video with their image released, all those sorts of things that are covered under both state law and the data practices request. We'll be redacting those. And then also it covers warranties on all the hardware. So the funding breakdown, the Metro Transit Police Department is covering about $308,309 over the next 2 years generally for the equipment. And then information services is going to be covering about $1.7 million, which will be billed back to us, and that'll be over the 5-year contract. The timeline following the successful contract negotiations that procurement is still engaged in with Axon. Once that contract is finalized and signed, then we'll be able to start moving forward with the vendor. They will have one of their representatives come out and do a train the trainer help us configure the equipment, things like that. And then we'll be able to get those cameras out to our officers and be ready to roll forward. I'm ready for any questions if anyone has any.
All right, any questions for Leah?
Chair Barber, this is Councilmember Cummings. I have a couple of questions.
Yep, go ahead, Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you. I am curious, this is coming up now, and I know that we approved this many months ago and have been talking about it since 2019. I'm just curious about why it takes so long to get to this point in moving forward with procuring the cameras. That would be one question. And then after the process after this is approved will take approximately how long? I guess I'm wondering when these actually will be used. I know we were going to roll it out on a staged basis with a limited number of officers using it to iron out kinks and bugs and things like that, and make sure that it was working and it was achieving what we wanted it to do. So I'm curious about that. And then I'm wondering too, as far as, I think this is a critical issue, and I think it's of utmost importance. And I'm wondering if there is any way to expedite procurement to get the cameras, much as we did with COVID supplies and things like that. So those are a few of my questions. If you could give me some answers, I would appreciate it. Thank you for your presentation.
Chair Barber and Councilmember Cummings and the rest of the committee, first of all, we appreciate those questions. Those are really great questions. In terms of the contract negotiations, I'm not privy to that. That's obviously between the vendor and procurement. I believe Jody Jacoby said that she was going to be present. I'm not sure if she's still on, but she might be able to answer those better for you. And the same thing with expediting the procurement process. Again, as far as I'm aware, that's not really something the police department would be able to get into, but that would be a good question for procurement. In terms of how fast we could be getting going once the contract is signed, the Axon, the vendor, has said they could have someone out here in 2 to 4 weeks once that contract is signed, so that we can really get forward with that training and get those cameras out. And we're going to be training officers sort of on a rolling basis. So we'll have some going out each week as we're able to train the officers.
Thank you, Leah. And I see that Jody is on as an attendee, but I need the host to unmute her.
Chair and committee members, can you hear me?
Thank you. Hi, Jody.
Hi, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jody Jacoby, and I'm the director of the procurement department. And this procurement process was satisfied using a cooperative procurement venture issued by Sourcewell, which is a Minnesota service cooperative. And the council has the statutory authority under 123A.21 to utilize a service cooperative like this with Sourcewell. And we are in the final negotiations with Axon, and this contract will be ready upon the council's approval next week. And it's my understanding, based on conversations with the service representative, that they will be able to place an order the next day. And so from the time from the contract signature to delivery should be very quick.
Just a quick follow-up, Chair, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Is this the normal course of time that a contract like this takes to negotiate? I mean, it will be close to a year before we actually are using these. I'm just curious if this is the normal length of time that this type of procurement takes.
Madam Chair, committee member, this is definitely not a normal contract, and this was not a normal process or a timeline. There were a few different stages that needed to get approved, and the policy on body cameras wasn't approved until, and I can have Leah confirm this, but I think until March. And then there needed to be some collaboration with procurement and also with the Office of General Counsel. But absolutely, this was not a normal procurement.
Okay, well, that helps to understand the timing. Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions from council members?
Councilmember Chambliss, please.
Councilmember Chambliss?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I have a couple questions too. When a call is made and we've procured all the body cameras, will there be a way to identify when the cameras are turned on in real time?
Chair Barber and Councilmember Chambliss, we'll be able to, I guess I would say that we'll be able to update you as those cameras go out. I'm not maybe understanding the question entirely in terms of what sort of information you'd be looking for.
Okay, let me clarify. Once the body cam, once a call is made, that, you know, we're police officers have made a call, and the cameras start rolling, is there a way for you to tell if the cameras are rolling?
Oh, I'm so sorry, I misunderstood you. Yes, so physically when the officer turns the camera on, there's a light right in the front of the camera that turns red. So anyone who's looking at the officer would know that the event is being recorded on his or her body camera.
Real time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then you were talking about some of the information would be redacted. When the body camera is on and the police officer is in a private home, are there parts of that video that would be redacted?
Chair Barber and Councilmember Chambliss, the committee, yes. The short answer is it would rely on the Data Practices Act in terms of what would be redacted and what wouldn't, who in the video could be redacted and who wouldn't. The officers' identities and voices are always public unless it's an undercover officer. In terms of other subjects that would be on the video, children, juveniles, vulnerable victims, adults, it sort of varies, and it's all within the data practices. And it's also within our policy that will be posted online.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any additional questions from council members?
Chair Barber, it's Councilmember Cummings. I have one more question. And it's,
No problem.
Are we anticipating that we will need additional staffing to respond to data requests for video?
Chair Barber and Councilmember Cummings, we do appreciate that question. Thank you for bringing that up. We are going to be looking to hire 2 what we call video techs that will help us support those data practices requests, review video, if redaction is necessary, that sort of thing, and be able to provide that data to whoever it is that's requesting it, or prosecutors or officers, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
All right. Additional questions?
This is Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember.
Sorry, my phone died, which I'm calling in from, so I will ask for forgiveness if this is a repeat. But I want to thank Councilmember for her questions, and I'm in agreement. And I'm wondering if we can get when this comes to council, if we can also receive a timeline for implementation and key milestones, along with who is the responsible party for those key milestones.
Chair Barber and Councilmember Atlas Ingebretson, I think that we could probably provide that. Again, we'd need to be working with procurement to make sure that, when the contract is signed and through on their part, and then looking at our end to say, how the project is going to be managed, that sort of thing. I don't think that we'd be able to have that ready, say, at next week's council meeting on the 22nd, but I think that we'd be able to get it to you fairly soon after that.
I'm actually interested in a timeline that includes the procurement timeline. from beginning of the process till today. And I think even if it's a draft timeline of here's what we're anticipating, that would be fine. But I think that's going to be a very important part of our conversation. I'm sure everyone can appreciate that our desire is to show that we are monitoring our progress towards implementation of this very needed equity improvement.
Councilmember, I can definitely appreciate your point there, and we'll make sure that we work with procurement and put together something for you to review, definitely.
All right, any additional comments, questions from council members? All right, if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-194.
Sterner, so moved.
Move to approve.
Okay, moved by Sterner and second by Cummings. Is there any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Zirin.
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye. And the motion carries. So council members, if we could pause before moving on to our next business item. We have two business items and then we had an additional information item afterwards. So my question is we're already at 6 o'clock. So do we want to move the information item out until our next meeting? So then our presenters for that can step off, or do we want to move ahead with that this evening?
Can you remind us of the info item? I'm got my hands busy trying to help my son with a French class.
It's the second half, like we had started going through the COVID-19 transportation survey data, and we got through the first part of it at our last meeting, but we didn't get all the way through it because it was getting quite late for that. And I believe it's something that will prompt a lot of good discussion. So I want to make sure we give it the time worthy for it. I believe that at our next meeting, we do have the public comment on the TPP, which will likely take more time than the one for the TIP. But I believe the rest of the agenda is fairly light. I don't know if Nick or Wes can comment on that.
Madam Chair, yes, the next agenda so far is pretty light with business items.
Okay. So what would council members' preference be?
I think that's a good idea. I think, excuse me, this is Councilmember Cummings. I think that's going to have probably some robust question and answer. And so I would agree with you that postponing to give it the time that it deserves is a good idea.
I've seen the I've seen the data at TAB, and it is quite interesting. Both what's really happening and people's perception of what might happen going into the future. So I think it's very relevant to the work that we're doing. So
Yeah, I'm good too.
Oh, we do have our budget presentation on the 27th, but yes, we'll find a way. So if we can keep everything else as much as possible to a light agenda, we'll do that. All right. So so Ashley and Jonathan Ehrlich, thank you for hanging in there with us tonight. And we promise that we will make sure that we find time for the rest of this as well. Yeah, so Ashley did just put a note in the comments, said, take a look at the presentation and forward on any questions or comments, and she can even use that to inform the discussion as it comes back to us at our next meeting. Thank you, Ashley. Appreciate that. All right, with that, we'll move on to our last two business items. The next one is business item 2020-199, which is purchase go-to card validators for Orange and D-Line. And we have Dennis Dworshak here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Dennis Dworshak, Revenue Operations Manager at Metro Transit. I'm here to present the last two business items for the purchase of fare collection equipment for the Orange Line BRT with options to purchase that same equipment for the D Line. The first business item, 2020-199, is the request for approval for a sole source contract to purchase Cubic Smart Card validators for a total not to exceed $1.6 million. Cubic Smart Card validators, as Nick had mentioned previously, are used throughout the system for off-board fare payments, primarily on the light rail and BRT lines. We also have a couple portables that we use for special events. The validators were used to collect well over 80% of the fares in 2019 for about 1.2 million tags in 2019. Off-board fare payments on BRT lines provide advantages, which enables buses to meet running times. Basically, off-board fare payments for BRT keeps the R or the rapid in BRT. Validators have the latest technology for fast, reliable method of fare payment exceeding ADA accessibility, such as audio messaging and distinguishable tones for visually impaired customers. Cubic is the only manufacturer that integrates the hardware and software with our existing fare collection equipment. Metro Transit takes advantage of quantity discounts by providing an option for purchasing the same equipment for the D line. The $14,500 unit price has been analyzed against previous purchases and deemed very fair and reasonable. Off-board fare collection of smart cards provides residents of Twin City neighborhoods the options to pre-purchase fare products that meet their individual needs. Cubic validators have been a reliable, cost-effective device with a solid reputation for validating many millions of fare payments since they were first installed in 2004. So Revenue Operations is recommending approval of a sole source contract for purchasing the smart card validators for a total cost of not more than $1.6 million. Madam Chair, council members, this concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions from council members? If not, then I would entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-199.
Member Atlas Ingebretson, so moved.
Moved by Atlas Ingebretson. Do I have a second?
Zirin seconds.
Seconded by Zirin. Is there any other discussion? Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson. Fredson. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye, and the motion carries. Next, we're on to our last business item 2020-200.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. The next business item is 2020-200, which is a request for approval for a sole source contract to purchase Flowbird ticket vending machines for the Orange Line, and an option again to purchase this equipment for the D line, not to exceed $2.8 million. A little bit of background, Metro Transit first used the Flowbird, which is formerly known as the Parkey ticket vending machines on the A line in 2016. At that time, Metro Transit submitted a request for a proposal for the smaller light ticket vending machine as an alternative for the larger full TVMs that you see on the rail lines. Flowbird was awarded the contract after a competitive bid agreement and reviewing the demonstrations. Flowbird was also awarded a sole source contract in 2019 for the launch of the C line. Flowbird continues to be the best option for BRT corridors where most customers use smart cards. In 2019, ticket vending machines on the A line and C lines had about 200,000 transactions for a value of about $440,000. Flowbird is the only manufacturer of the ticket vending machines that are compatible with the hardware and software of our existing systems. The quoted price of $13,350 has been analyzed against previous purchases and contract prices from other transit agencies. We've contacted several other transit agencies, and they're deemed to be very fair and reasonable. Although 80% of the customers use smart cards for their fare payments, it is also prudent for customers to have the opportunity to purchase tickets using cash or credit cards. Low income and Unbanked and underbanked customers also are more likely to use cash as compared to other customers. By continuing to accept cash fare payments on the Orange and D line, Metro Transit meets Title VI and other requirements, ensures that all of our customers will continue to have flexibility in how we pay our fares. The equipment in this contract includes advanced technology offering upgrades of our existing equipment, just a shorter transaction speed, enhanced ADA accessibilities, and more types of fare products, providing exceptional value and a seamless fare payment experience for our customers. Revenue Operations recommends approving this sole source for ticket vending machines for a cost of not to exceed $2.8 million. Madam Chair, Council members, this concludes this part of the presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions you have on ticket vending machines.
Thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions from council members? Hearing and seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve business item 2020-200.
Cummings move.
Moved by Cummings. Is there a second?
Sterner, second.
Second by Sterner. Is there any other discussion? Becky, could you call the roll?
Atlas Ingebretson,
Aye.
Chambliss,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ferguson, Fredson, Gonzalez,
Aye.
Sterner,
Aye.
Zirin,
Aye.
Chair Barber.
Aye. With that, the motion carries. So one last thing, well, we've got actually a couple of last things. So the first one is determining what moves on consent and non-consent to the council. I would say all items except number 1, a non-consent, the budget amendment, and number 4, the approval for the body worn cameras can go consent to the full council unless I hear any other disagreement on that. Okay. All right, sounds good. And then I just wanted to mention too, so because this was a public meeting at the beginning of the meeting, it was set up on the WebEx events. I know that there was some issues with getting in and logging in, and we'll work those out over the next couple of weeks ahead of our next public hearing. And so there might be, if needed, we may reach out to some of you individually to make sure we have any tech challenges managed ahead of that meeting. I know that our staff was very quick on their feet to get people moved around into the right place, but we want to make sure that we get things done pretty seamlessly. If possible, maybe before the next meeting, if you can hop on the line a little early so we can mitigate everything ahead of the meeting, that might be helpful. But do let us know what you were experiencing so we know that we can make sure that we take care of it as much as we can ahead of time. Okay. All right. Anything from anyone else? And then if I hear no objection, we will be adjourned.